Hey guys, Forester Riley here. As you can see, I'm out here in the Cross Timbers Forest in central Oklahoma, and this is my favorite mushroom hunting spot. Came out today to show you guys how to forage for mushrooms, but it's a little bit early for this spot. Nothing's producing yet, so I thought I'd go ahead and give you a quick rundown of sort of the forest type that we're looking at here. So if you can see behind me, you can see that we've got a lot of smaller trees and not a lot of understory in this forest here. Out here we've got primarily blackjack oak, chinkapin oak, elm, eastern red cedar, post oak, and there's a little bit of persimmon out here. But see if you can see this. You notice most of these trees are all about the same size, except for a couple big ones. See if I can point. All right, so right over in here, it's a nice big post oak. Kind of see the canopy of it there. It's got nice lower limbs that stretch out. So what that tells us is that this used to be an open prairie with maybe just a couple trees per acre out here. So you'll see these big trees with lower limbs, meaning that they had nothing around them to stop them from growing. So they grew those lower limbs, while every other tree out here doesn't have too many lower limbs. See that? Or if they do, they're just small, then they get tall, even though they're fairly young trees. So that's how we can tell that the trees with no lower limbs grew closely together with a lot of competition. So because they're all relatively the same size and the same age, they've grown up together really quick. And all around these a couple big trees around here. So that right there tells us before European settlement, probably this was all open prairie here. So just a couple things to look for, and I'll show you some of the species and how to identify them in the wintertime just by the bark. Back here we've got a little stand of blackjack oaks. You notice this really rough, dark bark, and the trees are rarely straight. They kind of twist and turn, and then they all have these bell-shaped leaves on them. You can see them all over the ground here. If you'll notice, kind of looks like a bell, right? Got those little points on the three tips there. That's your typical blackjack oak leaf. All right, so here we have a chinkapin oak. So you can kind of see here, this bark, it's really kind of flaky. Just flakes off. It's got that light color to it. There we go. So you'll see the kind of wavy type look to it. Got those wavy edges, almost like a chestnut. And that's your chinkapin oak. Really easy to identify, especially with the bark. And if you've got foliage on them, they're really simple. All right here we have an ash, probably a green ash because of where we're located. But here's kind of the bark of an ash tree. Really easy to tell. See how deeply furrowed it is, the little kind of diamond shaped furrows in the bark here. So those are really easy to see from a distance. And these typically grow in wet areas. And blackjack and post oak typically grow on drier sites. And this site is really interesting because it's got both. It's got ash and it's got the drier site species in it. So yeah, pretty cool spot here. All right guys, I found an elm tree, an American elm behind me. I'm gonna show you quickly how to identify this tree. Really simple here. Take you over here. Can you see this kind of blonde streaking that we've got going on coming out from that dead limb right there? See if you can see that. That is really common for American elms, or really any elm species. They'll exhibit that blonde streaking, which tells you right away what you've got going on. If you look down here on the ground, we'll find some foliage for you. Let's see here. Here we go, here's one. So, see that base of that leaf there? See how it's uneven? It's not symmetrical. That's pretty typical for a elm leaf. So, it's one of the only species that has that uneven base there. Here's another really good example of it. See that uneven base? And then the serrated edges. So that's a typical elm leaf for you. Now, while I came over here to show you how to identify an elm, I found something else really neat. Around elm trees is where I like to look for morel mushrooms. They tend to grow at the base of elms, sometimes cedars, but usually elms. So I thought I'd show you this. Just found these while I was looking at this tree. See if you guys can see these. There it is. My thumb for comparison. There's a couple of them right here. Yeah. We'll let these grow for a couple of days, come back out here and harvest them. Then we'll show you what you can do with those later on. Thanks.